Hello and welcome to today's video. Today I'm looking at a few nibs. So there's a brand called Cypress and they make amazing fountain pens. And pens I'm looking at and hoping to get a chance to review in the upcoming future. But they also make their own in-house nibs and they fit the Jowo nib housing. So here I have a fine, medium and a broad steel nib to look at. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little writing sample with each of them. I'm going to use a Just Turnings fountain pen here as like the nib holder, if you will. Just Turnings fountain pens have Cypress nibs available as options. And so I thought it'd be a great chance to sort of show those off. And if we look at the, sort of the basics of them, the nib is actually quite a beautiful nib. I really like the design. It's, this two-toned nib. The plating is not always exactly perfect. I'm not sure if that'll come up, but they are lovely. And if you look at them alongside here, a standard Jowo nib and housing. Oh, just get them to sit. You can see they line up and they fit into that Jowo housing pretty well. They're a number 6 size nib, and as I said, I have fine there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these in, I'm going to do a writing sample with Waterman Serenity Blue, and then I'm going to compare those nib sizes, or the line width, I should say, to standard Jowo line width. So let's get started. So as I said, these are Cypress nibs. They are steel. I'll link to the Cypress website down below as well. And this is the fine nib. So it's very smooth. There's a bit of feedback on it. But it's not an unpleasant feedback. In fact, it's quite a nice feedback. And there is just a tiny amount of line variation possible from these nibs. They're not soft, they're not springy necessarily, but you can just squeeze a little bit out, which is quite nice. What I'm going to do at the top of the page is just a little section of lines here, and then write fine. And then we'll be able to compare those with the Jowo standard sizes as well. So that's the fine nib. I like it. It's not super fine, but I think it stands up alongside other fine nibs. It's certainly what I would designate as a fine from writing with it. As I said, it's smooth. There is a hint of feedback, but nice and smooth. And, although this is not a standard writing test, like with the pen inked through and things like that, it's a primed feed. It is relatively wet as well. So I like it a lot. An interesting detail I forgot to mention earlier is that the housing is even pressed with Cypress written there as well. So, these are entirely made for them, not just Cypress nibs put into a Jowo housing. It's nice to see. As I said, I think they're aesthetically quite a beautiful nib. Okay, now we've got the medium. And this is a big jump up from the fine. It's a nice standard sort of round nib, line between the cross strokes and the up and down strokes. This is very nice. This is super smooth. There is a ton less feedback on this medium nib. As you would expect, the more tipping you have, the smoother that surface can kind of be. It's not going to be as sharp on the page. A bigger ball of tipping, a smoother nib. And also, once again, it is slightly on the soft side, just enough to get a little bit of line variation out. And as I said, primed feed, but pretty wet. It's a really nice smooth nib and it's got really great flow. Okay, let's now do that little line check up the top here again. Okay. So, medium nib, very, very nice. Once again, I would say this is close to what I would consider to be a standard medium nib line width. This is all Waterman Serenity Blue, I should say as well. But it allows for nice shading, as a little bit of line variation if you want to press gently. And actually you don't need to apply a whole lot of pressure to get that kind of line variation, much less than a Jowo and like infinitely less than a Bock. I prefer, so far, I would have to say I prefer these nibs over Bock nibs any day of the week. But nice difference there between the fine and the medium. Let's now check out the broad. So this broad nib is probably the one I've used the most so far. I've used this in a range of different pens, from a couple of pens from Just Turnings. I've even had it in my Gravitas Pens Delrin, which made a very, very nice writer. But let's now check it out on the page. Okay, so we have the Cypress. So this is the broad. Had a little bit of a weird railroad there, but that's okay. Applying that pressure, once again, we get a little bit of line variation. I really like this. There isn't a whole lot of difference here between the medium and the broad. I'm just going to do two things here. I'm going to do the standard lines that I've been doing. And then I'm just also going to do a couple of sets just underneath the medium line here. Okay, so looking at firstly that broad and that medium next to each other, there's a little bit of difference. I suppose you can notice it. It's definitely more pronounced between the fine and the medium in these. And I think it really depends on the angle. I changed the angle halfway through there and managed to get a little bit wider line. I was probably applying just a tiny bit more pressure as well. So let's now show it alongside these Jowo nib sizes. So what I've done is I've done a writing sample here with extra fine, fine, medium and broad Jowo nibs. So we cover the same line variations, if you will, fine, medium and broad, and then one either side of the Cypress ones. Now, as you can see, the fine is quite similar. The medium is probably just ever so slightly finer there than the medium from Jowo, and the broad is definitely narrower than the broad from Jowo. But as I said, these are all done with Waterman Serenity Blue. So same ink, same paper, all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think you can see the fine particularly is very, very similar to the Jowo fine. It's an interesting comparison there. So this was three steel nibs from Cypress. Check them out online. Check out their Instagram and all that kind of stuff. As I said, the pens are absolutely beautiful. I've had them today in this Just Turnings fountain pen using the Jonathan Brooks or Carolina Pen Company Bohemian Twilight material. It's one of my favorites, and this beautiful matte finish that Just Turnings, Stephen Just over there, does so well. It's a beautiful, beautiful pen. As I said, these nibs are available on the Just Turnings pens. So check them out. I think they're beautiful aesthetically. Obviously, the housings and everything fit well into the sort of typical Jowo housing. And in terms of how they write, they're smooth. There is a hint of feedback, but they have this slight little bit of line variation available just from giving the slightest amount of pressure on the downstroke of your nib. I've had a couple of these in pens consistently for the last little while. I've never had any issues, and particularly this broad I've found particularly fun to write with. It is smooth, it is, as I said, reliable, and yeah, it's a nice option. And as I said earlier, I would take these nibs just about any day over just about any Bock nib I've got in my collection. So check these out, and thank you for watching, and I hope you found this video interesting and useful. Like and subscribe, hit the notifications button, all of that kind of stuff. thank you to Steve and Just at Just Turnings for providing me with these nibs to show you the sort of nibs that you can get and what the Cypress nibs are all about. And yeah, his support over the last little while has been really, really great. So thank you to him, and thank you to all of you for watching. And until next time, I'll talk to you soon.